Hey, thanks everybody for coming out. I'm very excited to be up here with these amazing editors. Big thanks to the Charlotte Film Festival for doing what they do. Taylor, putting a bunch of great stuff together. I don't know if Ivana is in the room, but Ivana Woodcock, just incredible work. The Charlotte Film Society, you all have done an amazing job, and this week has gone great, so excited for a great weekend. These panels have been a huge success so far, so thanks again for supporting. I am really excited to talk to these editors who all happen to be personal friends of mine, which I'm proud to say, about the process of editing, how they got into it, all the nitty gritty. I have some very juicy questions as a director.
Can't wait.
Good. So I'll do some intros here real quick. All right, her credits include Choir on Disney+, Dogs and the Pharmacist, both on Netflix. She was recently selected for the Sundance Institute Documentary Edit Residency. Claire Ave La Lamont.
Beautiful job. Yes.
I don't speak French.
We did an audio recording.
Yeah, I asked Claire to send me an audio recording. And Melissa's name as well, which we're not to yet, so we'll see if I get through both. All right, she's an Emmy award-winning editor, motion graphic artist, and producer. She's worked in educational programming with PBS, commercials for companies like Wells Fargo and Krispy Kreme, and some great short narrative films, one of which is here this week, Melissa Salpietra. And he was the lead editor on the hit Netflix show The Night Stalker. His other credits include Krishna's, Guru's Karma, Murder on Peacock, you can see it on Peacock, and Sins of Our Mother, also on Netflix. Chris Waldorf. All right, so we'll just go ahead and jump into some questions here. I think that I'm trying to decide exactly where to start because, well, let me give you a brief intro on myself. I'm Tim Grant. I'm a documentary filmmaker, primarily a director and a producer. I've dabbled in editing just enough to know I'm quite bad at it, and I am personally curious about the relationship between directors and editors, so just so you know, a little context. Some of my questions are selfish ones. I'm trying to learn as much as I can about this relationship because it's a working relationship that I, go through frequently and, love to be a good collaborator. So,
welcome to Tim's therapy session.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a little lab here. I want to start with each of you because you all work on different things, and some of you work on multiple things. And I want to hear what your definition of editing is, and if that changes between the different kinds of projects that you work on.
Can I go first?
Sure.
I work on one specific type of project. I work in documentaries as an editor, and I've heard many metaphors over the years. I've also been on an existential quest to maybe find the definition. And I think the thing that I have liked the most is this idea that editing is like having a 10,000 piece puzzle and you don't know what the cover image is. You have a vague outline. It's like somebody just doodled what you're supposed to fill in. But with documentaries, because there's no script, there's no roadmap per se, you're just shifting through all these jigsaw pieces and hoping it comes together. And it's not until you get pretty far into the process that you start to see this is gonna work. So I think for me, a puzzle metaphor is very much what editing is. Trial and error, trying to fit pieces next to one another. Maybe they work in a different part of the puzzle next to each other, but not in where you're working right now. So it's very exploratory and puzzle-esque for me.
I see editing as creative problem solving. That is what I do every day, all day. in any project I work in, whether it's a commercial or a documentary or a narrative, it's just creative problem solving to tell a story. But I agree with the puzzle.
Yeah, all of those things. Yeah, and I would just add, and we all do it, is that you're leading someone, you're leading the audience through the story. So it's just like, kind of like giving them pieces, giving them a little mystery, and just kind of propelling the story forward. So you're constantly, you don't get bored, you don't talk too much, You're raising questions and answering some, raising other questions, answering them later, just kind of keep you involved. And, it's also I'm a musician as well, so just the idea of music, just this kind of pure, the cinematic art form that we're all doing. It's just like you're creating these moments as you're going forward.
Was there a moment for each of you where early on where you edited something together, or there was a specific project where you thought, I can do this and I like this. This is exciting for me.
I think I had an experience as a kid on Windows Movie Maker, which is what inspired me to go into editing. I found that and I was like, wait a second, what is this fancy? I thought it was fancy at the time. It's very rudimentary. It was basically even worse than iMovie. It's like the lowest rung on the ladder, I think, in the editing tools maybe. But I found something that was both technical, tickling my brain, and then also creative joy. And I was cutting, it was like this is the mid-2000s, and I was cutting together videos of my sister. Little slapstick lip syncing videos, nothing, it wasn't like cinematic filmmaking in any regards, but I remember the satisfaction of showing somebody something that I had made. I spent a lot of time picking what was going to be included and what we would look at, and then the sort of reaction piece was really, really important to me. That's sort of being like, oh, is this how I get attention? No, I'm not good. Editors don't get that much attention. Wrong field. But so I think for me, it started early, thinking like, oh, I can impact people this way. And then my first experience getting to sit in a film premiere was really deeply like, oh, I can do this. And to see it on the big screen and know all of the decisions that had been made, know everything that got left out, know that there was 5 different versions of the film or what could have been the film. And to see one on the screen, your goal is it feels inevitable. There's no other way that film could have worked. We had a couple ways that really did not work. So then the fact that we're sitting here in an audience and getting to see it on the screen, I was like, okay, I will be able to do this again, somehow. It didn't feel like it in the process at all the times, but we got here. So I think that first premiere was a big indicator of we can do it.
I got through editing sort of backwards through science communication. So I didn't go to school for editing. I just sort of did it out of necessity. I was working at a PBS station up in Boston, and I was part of the web team, and they had all this extra footage that ended up on the cutting room floor. And my job was to put it together and make something of it. And this was back in the day when web video was ooh, wow, web video was something new. So I'm dating myself. But so for me, I just started editing because they needed somebody to do it. But similar to her puzzle reference, there was this feedback loop that developed when I would edit and something clicked and it worked. It was that same feeling you get when you put that puzzle piece in the puzzle and go, yes. And so it just it was a feedback loop. It just was I love this. I love doing this. I love struggling and then finding the solution. And struggling and then finding the solution. So it wasn't a moment, but an accumulation of many different moments in different projects that I've worked on. And now it's I love it. It's the only thing I want to do, right? It's my safe space. It's controlled. There's no crazy surprises. If you're on set or something happens, it's all, you've got the material there that you need to use, and it's just figuring out how to use it.
Yeah. I would say just, and I'd always done, ever since I was 10 years old, just making movies and cutting VHS deck to VHS deck, made myself even further. Yeah.
I did some of that.
We were doing they would have VHS decks, and you would program your input and output, and you would put a button, and the deck would rewind. I would like cut these little montages, but every once in a while, it would make an error. You rewind too far, and you would just lose like the hours with the board. You're like, no, stop. It's just like records of your like little, 6 frame, like 45 shots that you've done with your little fantasy montage. But then, I was always doing that. But then a big revelation for me was in more narrative. Like I remember in film school shooting coverage and not knowing how it would work. And I don't know why I didn't know it would work, but I remember like sitting down and editing and cutting through all the shoulder shots, and it was like, oh my god, like it's like a movie. You could actually, and then overlaying dialogue and doing all that stuff. I thought that was a big aha. I think it's kind of funny just because I do it so much now, but it was such a weird mystery at the time.
Chris, you were talking about questions, like when to raise questions and when to withhold, and question for all of you. Is that just a constantly developing like tool that you're trying to sharpen? Is it something that you study? Like, where do you get a sense for when to ask and pose a question in the story and when to withhold information?
Well, no, I think it's just kind of a gut feeling. I don't really think about it. It feels just kind of intuitive and, I don't know. One of my pet peeves is documentaries that drive me insane. That like when they just lay out the entire documentary in the first, like a preview for the documentary that you have to watch for the first 5 minutes, and just like stop. Like I would rather just like start and not know what's going to happen and see it develop, and that's one of those things that it's just become.
The streamers are going to come for you. They ask for it.
They do. I always try to subvert it. I'm just like, every job, I'm just like, let's not do the thing. It's like the first note. Just like this. So I'm always trying to figure out how to do it interestingly, I know what's happening. But I personally, like, that's one of those things that I feel like they're kind of screwing that up personally. Like, I really hate that.
So it's really it's an intuitive thing. It's an emotional thing for you. So what about you, Claire and Melissa? What do you think?
I agree there's some element of intuition, but I also think that there's like a trial through fire for feedback screenings. I think it is not clear always when you're working on it. Everything feels important. The order of operations, how we should learn information, and in what order feels like, oh yeah, I totally got it figured out. We need all of this. And then you show it maybe to a group of hopefully trusted and kind feedback friends who are going to be honest with you, but not hold anything back. And they might start pointing out some blind spots and some problems and some reasons that to question. Why is this part of the story? Why are you fighting so hard to make this piece work? And you get kind of in the weeds in a way that I think that gets less clear, especially when you're working with so many different maybe storylines or characters or themes in a film that 90 minutes can't hold all of it. And so it becomes this like continual refining of what is this one specific film trying to do in the world, what's the one message that we're trying to hone in on, because none of them are going to do all of the things. And so I think it's like getting really uncomfortable actually with the unknown part of it, like that you don't actually know, especially at the beginning, what those answers and how to lay that out perfectly. Like there is no perfect first draft. If we could get to the perfect first draft, the film would be done in a month. It's just not going to happen. So you have to be, I realized certainly very early on that if I wasn't going to be comfortable not feeling good at it and not knowing how to make those answers, it's like I can make an educated guess. And the more films I've done, the easier that maybe starting point has gotten to, but they're still not great, but it's at least something to respond to figure out like, ooh, that spoiled all of the suspense in the first 15 minutes. Like we got to move that, So I think it's gotten easier, but getting really comfortable with the discomfort part of it feels like essential for this work.
I'll mirror that. I think a lot of it is intuition. And on the projects, at least the narrative projects that I do, I look at myself as like the front line of the audience. I'm not on set, I don't see the performances, it comes to me, and watching these things, I am the audience. And we're all sophisticated, like movie, TV, visual watchers. Like we know when things don't work, and we know when things feel good and right. And so I think it is really just like putting it together and seeing if it feels right. And what feels right to me may be slightly different than you, but there is something that like it's just a feeling. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, and the feeling part is the part that scares me because I will have a feeling that something's not working, but I don't know what it is sometimes. And it makes me think that editors are pretty in tune with what they feel enough to like be able to break it down and apply it to a change. Can you talk a little bit about that? I don't know if that rings true for you all, or and do you think that there is this shared skill set that editors have related to that kind of thing?
I do think a lot of editors could be therapists, like we're absorbing the stories and figuring out their humanity, and then that's happening in real time with the director and how they're feeling about the film or not, and you're sort of navigating a lot of feelings all the time. But I think that there's maybe like a baseline empathy, like a curiosity about the human condition that allows you to be, I don't know, you're constantly looking for that, right? Like I'm trying to build a character that's about a specific, trying to evoke a certain feeling for the audience. You're kind of like always thinking about what's the audience going to be feeling about this. Like that is guiding your choices. So it's not always like your feelings. Like I've worked with characters that I don't love. They really annoy me, or this one thing, or they've got some specific thing that I'm like grinds my gears. But it's my job to make them likable, and I want you to like them. I want you to have empathy for them, and they need to for the story to work. And so sometimes I feel like it's always prioritizing the audience experience. They're the most like what you can interpret as like the most universal response that you would get to your choices.
And there's a lot of trusting in your own ability to do that. As an editor, I feel like if I'm building something, I'm trying to build suspense, or I'm trying to build empathy, that it's sort of, if I need to feel it, I need to know what it feels like, I need to experience it too, along with it. So it's this, like, you're observing it and you're manipulating it, but you're also feeling it. Like, I've got a film that I edited, 3 years ago. Every time I watch it in one part of the film, my heart starts to beat faster. I know it's coming, right? But we did that, right, together. The actors, the director, and myself crafted that scene so that I'm hoping that other people are feeling the same thing. I think they are. So it's just trusting, I guess, your own intuition on some of those things. Your own, ability to read emotions and feel the story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, great.
I would say, like, to add to that, those are all, yeah. Like I also have like short-term memory problems. So like one of my great, I use it as an asset. So I'm like either like a goldfish swimming around, just like looking and just like, ooh, like that's interesting. Just and I can see it new every time. I feel like when I'm watching something, I'm just like, oh nope, like I'm out. Something happened there, and it's not. So you can get through the scene watching it, where I'm just like happy with the whole thing, how it all feels. The rhythm of it's right, it's just all working, and everything is, just clicking and it's happening, and just being able to know when it's not right, I can watch a scene without hitting the space bar and being like, yeah, stop, that's wrong,
Yeah, the short-term memory I would think would come in handy, because you have to watch these things hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times.
I don't know about on docs though. They've got a lot of material, and like I feel like if I guess in the edit, the edit choices are very, very helpful. You gotta remember all of the various moving parts.
Right.
That come together.
No, talking about the edit, like actually watching that, seeing the thing that you created, like you go through the whole process of understanding where all the footage is and what all the pieces are and putting them together. But then once you sit back and watch it, it's like,
I can actually say early on when I was editing, to the point of trusting yourself, and I think too, like being able to watch it and be happy with it, I used to feel like I had to edit with music. like with a guide, and I realized that I was leaning on that to try to like make sure I was nailing the emotion. Like I was like, if I hit the right music, they're gonna feel it. And I realized I wasn't actually trusting that the edit itself was gonna do that. And so once I like kind of unlocked that I was using that as a tool, I realized I looked back at some of the things I've edited and I'm like, holy crap, there's too much music. Like I hate this. And so I went through a phase of really learning that I needed to strip things back and trust that the story was carrying through, that the edit was going to carry through the emotions. Certainly music is still very valuable, but not as a crutch, like only where it's additive.
Yeah, how do y'all build edits? Like, what is the process like? And I realize that it will be very different for documentary versus scripted films, but I'm interested in the differences as well. But you bring up music, Claire. Like, when do you introduce music? Like, when do you show something to someone? Like, do you all have kind of like a little bit of a playbook for how to do projects, or do they change based on the project quite a bit?
I would say, I mean, for documentaries, I usually try to cut the scene together and really get the beginning, middle, and end for whatever the scene is, whatever section of the story you're trying to tell. And I find when I go back and put music on, there is a little bit of searching for the right piece of music. Sometimes I'll build around a piece of music. But I will find that a lot of times I end up slowing things down. Like without music, I'm kind of just telling the story too quickly. And then sometimes it's just like, oh, just hold it. It's hard. For me personally, it's hard to do without music. I'm really finding those moments that are just great. Cinematic, where you're just like, just chill out. Like you don't need to move, like hold on that guy's face and just like let the moments sit for a while. It's and again, I'm a musician, so I might overdo music, but I also enjoy the whole thing together. It's one of those, like when you go to watch a movie, it's like how many times are you able to sit and listen to a piece of music that sounds this good in the theater? It's like just what a treat. It's like nobody has like a hi-fi anymore that they sit in their living room and just really listen to music. I think as much as they probably should or used to, and it's just just like listen to this song. Just chill out. Like you can watch this visual over it. I think that's it. For me, it's a huge part.
Awesome.
I start at the beginning, and I think part of that is, especially with narrative films, like I start at the beginning because again, I'm that first audience member, so I feel like it's like I need to just start laying things out at the beginning and lay bare bones all the way through, and then I usually go back and refine. But what I love to do is when I go back and refine is in the narrative space, I find that moment of change, right? In most movies, there's that moment of change. And that's the one that I like to work on first, because that's like, right? That's the reason that you're watching. And I build that out as much as I can. And then like the lead in and the lead out, and then I kind of go back and just keep refining. And then I will put in scratch tracks. Usually the narratives I work on will go through, like somebody will do music for it. So I'll just put in scratch tracks to kind of get a beat and a rhythm. But sometimes I just edit without music completely, and I just rely on the pacing of the scene and the emotion of the scene to carry through, and hope that the music, musician will figure it out, that it works. But yeah, so that's what I do with the narrative stuff.
And Melissa, I'm curious. I'm sorry. No, Claire, go ahead. I'll come back to Melissa.
Okay. Sure. I was actually going to say, I think the beginning of, at least the documentaries, is the hardest possible thing. So to start there feels terrifying, because I think you could spend all 9 months of your edit figuring out the right opening. The first 10 minutes of a film feel really, really hard. And so I think for me, somewhat to your point, the experience of coming in to start the edit is often I will have a really long conversation with the director about what their vision and intention is, but I don't want them to tell me how it's going to come together. I just want them to tell me why they're making it, what's the point, what do you want to do with it, And then I'm like, okay, stop talking. I don't want you to like bias me in any way. Like, let me just watch everything. And that's a very scary, vulnerable space for a director or producer or anybody who's just like, oh, you have to take 3 months to watch all of our 8 years of shooting. I'm like, yes, there's a lot of footage. And you have to really digest that. And so there's sort of a conversation that comes, I think the real creative conversation starts after I've been able to watch all of the footage that exists. And it's that first real gut check of, okay, is what you told me, do I see if that's possible? Do I see that in this footage? And sometimes I say, yes, we can totally do that. That's going to be great. And then sometimes I go, I think you missed the mark a little bit, but I saw this other stuff. And this is really interesting. Have you ever thought about this? And it sort of changes the way that we start the edit. But usually from that conversation, from watching all the dailies, all the raw footage, I will have had a batch of material, somewhat to your point, like looking for the change point that you're like, deeply resonates with you. I'm like, we have to cut that first so that we get like some trust building, like this is gonna work, because we're gonna experiment with like probably the first 10 minutes of the film, and it's gonna feel rocky and not working, so let's make sure we have a good proof of concept that you and I are aligned on, so that we know where we're gonna go. And that's usually like just because the material itself is inherently the strongest, like in its raw form. So I guess it's in that case it feels like low-hanging fruit to start on. Like, look, like what you did in the field work and what I'm doing here can work. So yeah, that's usually a starting point, but we'll make that sort of maybe a first sample, seeing that's getting that style and tone, but we don't spend too much time on that, and then we go into the big roadmap of trying to lay it all out.
The question that you have of is what you think is there, is it really there to directors? That's very triggering for me, so I just want to say.
Again, welcome to this therapy session.
So I'll go ahead and ask the juicy question that actually kind of like, I had written the title of this panel as this, and then we decided, okay, maybe we shouldn't put this. But the question is, what do you wish directors knew about your job? What is it that you feel like, I'll just say I don't get as a director, as someone who's not in the edit, and you know, I know you want to be diplomatic, you don't have to be, you can talk to me. You know, what is it that we just can't quite understand because we're not in the edit every day, every hour?
Can we turn off the camera? No, I'm just kidding. To every director I've ever worked with, no, I'm just kidding. I think for me, there is a level of, first I do think it's like acknowledging that like, you don't have all the answers, I don't have all the answers. Like we're not supposed to have all the answers, and that's okay. And I think it's kind of like a checking your ego at the door thing. But I think sometimes that maybe directors aren't always as aware of their specific biases or attachments to things in the field, that they're really wanting to be part of the story for one reason or another. And so I sort of see the edit specifically as being like the most objective. I will gain my own biases and I have my own darlings and things that I want to be in the film, but kind of the editor being the line of defense of what the audience's experience is. And I feel like sometimes it's a hard conversation to say something doesn't fit, or like you're really pushing for this one character, one storyline, one scene, and it's too much or it's not working. And that sometimes is coming from like they spent so long to get this person to agree to be part of the movie, or there's some other not story-based reason that they think this person must be in it. Or we shot so much footage, we spent so much money and time that we must use it.
Yeah, I'm trying to shoot it because it's getting louder.
It's because I'm getting so excited about the
I don't know if it's yours or.
Okay. But anyway, yeah, I think it's like sometimes there's pushes to include things because of logistical reasons. Costs a lot of money, we did it, we should use it, and that's not always the best way to tell your story. I think often sometimes that can get in the way. And so you have to do what serves the story.
And I think there's also a space there for the directors to come around to it, right? Like we as editors, if we're not on set and we're not seeing all the drama and all the money and we're not involved in all of those logistics, we're looking at it very cut and dry. There's no emotion involved. You know, I'm not holding on to a certain piece of footage or a certain performance or a certain scene. But I think that there's this sort of like delicate way to sort of hold that space for the director of like them not wanting to let it go, but also like, sometimes I feel like directors need to be just walked through. They need to see that it doesn't work. They need to put it in the edit. Let's show a couple people, like, and then there's a way to do it, I think, that isn't just like ripping off the Band-Aid, So there's a little bit of client management in that.
To that point, let me just also say, I have been wrong many times in the edit. Like, I might fight for this thing too, and then I put it together and I'm like, dang it didn't work the way I thought it was going to. And I think that's been humbling and a reminder of like, I need to try their ideas, even though I think that I am the expert on everything in the footage that exists. And they need to be open to exploring, or at least trying something without it to see. So there's sort of a two-way street there.
Chris?
I don't know. I mean, for the most part, I feel like we're always on the same wavelength. I'm trying to think of, disagreements. A lot of the times I find the disagreements I have are like maybe like cutting too much and kind of not embracing how they felt the first time they watched it when it was working. A lot of times it's like they'll watch it and they'll get impatient. It's like, you've seen this 25 times. Like, no offense, but nobody else is going to watch it. You'll be lucky if somebody watches this twice. And it's just like, so it's just like, how do you feel? Remember how you felt the first time you watched it, because now you're getting impatient, and now you want to cut it, and you're getting self-conscious of it's taking too long. Get around to the point, and just hold on to that. Hold on to that moment when you first saw it and you loved it. Just be prepared to fight for it.
I'm curious if other editors do this, but I take a lot of notes when I'm watching the raw footage. Mostly just not about what's happening, but how I'm feeling when I watch it. Do you ever go back? Sometimes, like when we get to a fine cut, we're pretty close. I'll be like, oh, let me just go back and look at these notes, like my first reactions to stuff. Sometimes I find things that I missed, I forgot existed, they fell through the cracks for some reason or other, and then sometimes it's really affirming. You're like, oh, yes,
This is the best one.
This is the best
The
one.
best take. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever go back?
I go back. I go through and use markers, and either Avid or Premiere. I just mark the footage and kind of have my own little system of like big caps and like saying what they said, just like this is a great line, like really marking these moments. So it's definitely worth going back. Sometimes you try to get that great moment in there and you can't make it work at the time, but then 6 months later you're going back and there's like, oh, there it is, like that. Now it works. So
The film is 2 hours shorter. All of a sudden, that 30-second moment has space.
Right.
Do you all have influences or preferences that you really try to get into your work? I mean, I know you're working on so many different kinds of things, so many different kinds of stories, but is there something about you that you're trying to bake in to your work, or something that you love about film that you're trying to bake in?
If there's something about me that I'm trying to bake into my work, I'm not aware of it. So, I don't know. Yeah. I'm sure that if you gave me similar footage to her, we would cut different things. We would cut it in a different way. But I'm not aware of what that is. I kind of just feel like it's like a processing thing. That whatever you give me, I'm going to process it through my history, my experiences, my worldview, whatever, in a certain way that's different than hers, that's different than his. But I could not define it. And I didn't go to film school, so I'm not into I don't know anything about the whole theory of editing, blah, blah, blah. But it's just the intuition would be different. And not in a bad way, in a good way, right? Yeah.
I could study your films and maybe offer you some observations on what your fingerprint looks like, because I do think we have fingerprints.
Yeah.
As editors. I think especially so for me in documentaries, it's there's so many different ways to do films in general, but documentaries feel particularly formless. And I worked on quite a few personal documentaries, so when you have access to your participant is also immediately your collaborator, there's so much room for experimenting with something unconventional. And I think for me, I've kind of really tried to, I do care a lot about sort of defining my, I don't know, now it sounds pretentious, I get my editor's voice, like what does that fingerprint look like? What are the types of projects I want to bring into my life? And that openness to sort of an experimental or more lyrical or meditative experience is really important to me. To create, I think often in documentaries, you don't capture every single moment. There's not a scene. There's not just like a conversation of somebody saying all the right things perfectly. You're documenting things that maybe happened in the past, but there's no real footage for, and you have to figure out how to architect these moments. And I think those can be really beautiful spaces to like explore something abstract and experimental and emotive, and that's really, really exciting for me. And I feel like that started for me, my I would just say fell into documentaries. I just moved to New York. I also didn't go to film school. And the first project that gave me a job was independent first-time filmmakers documentaries. So she had access to her personal family home videos, and the editor on that had a very visual artist background. So she was constantly exploring ways that we might be in these sort of meditative spaces. As we were telling a story about the director's uncle, Cecilia, her uncle had died at the height of the AIDS crisis. So for example, there was a scene that we were talking about being in the hospital and what his legs looked like. And it was very descriptive. And some editor may have chosen to go download the stock images that would have correlated to what we were saying. The editor that I worked with found in the home videos this undersea Super 8 millimeter stuff. No, Super 8 in 8 millimeter, separate thing. Super 8 footage that was underwater. And it had all this coral, and coral was gnarly, and it sort of was purplish, and it sort of mimicked, but was not exactly what we were talking about. So the sort of openness to the lack of being literal really, really works, I think, for spaces of trauma, spaces of hardship. And so I really try to end up embracing that. I've taken on some pretty heavy films, and I've often had to lean into a very sort of experimental space to talk about challenging things.
Yeah, it's a great example of how much latitude, especially documentary, it feels. I mean, we all work in documentary. Although, Chris, I know you work in scripted films as well, and taking a step back and kind of marrying it with this question of what thumbprint do you put on it. You are also a director, so the previous question, you could have been critical of yourself as a director, having to edit your own stuff. I don't know if you ever experienced that, and then, if you're trying to get anything specific.
I always try to, it's almost like you put on a different hat as soon as you start editing. I do it all the time, where you're just like, you're working on a shot, you're trying to do the thing, and you know what it was like on set. Personally, I'm pretty good about that, I think, of just sitting down and watching it. For some reason, it's just totally different than watching it on set. You're watching the takes and you're trying to get the shot.
It's that short-term memory loss.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I sit down and I put it in the Avid or whatever, or Premiere, and just you watch it and you're just like, doesn't work. Like, I need to cut this long shot that I swore would work, that I've been working on forever, and it's like, it takes me like 3 minutes to be like, that director is a dumbass. I can't believe you thought that would work. I gotta cut this thing out.
Are there ideas, or is there anything specific that come to mind that you're trying to get in, you're trying to get across as an artist, as an editor?
Not necessarily. I mean, I'm always looking for shots that you can hold on for as long as possible, and without getting. They're just mesmerizing, and I see it all the time. Where it's narrative stuff, especially, just like you can tell that there's this beautiful shot, and the editor just like cuts it off, and it's a weird cut, and it's like, just play that shot. Like, you had the moment, like you had me there, and like I could have watched that dolly shot, do the whole thing. I don't know if I can. Some people. I try to not do that. I try to be very patient with all that stuff. Make answering your question.
You know, I think so. I mean, it's like you're not getting paid by the word, you know.
Right.
You can hold you are a talent that can decide not to cut as well as to cut, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you know, for the most part, you want to be invisible. You know, I don't want to every once in a while, you know, do something. I always joke with the director that I work with, I always wanted to put my credit like just in the middle of a movie, you know? Just like,
Love that idea. Let's
like
start that.
after a really cool sequence. just throw your credit up there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love that idea.
Post it on the fridge, like in the background behind the main character, edited by.
Yeah, that same director, I always say, whenever we get to the end of the movie, I always like, you know, build up to the last shot. And it just every time, edited by Chris Walker. It makes him laugh every time. He forgets that I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, as an editor, that sounds cool. As a director, maybe not so much. All right, let's take some questions. Yes, right here in the front-ish.
Hey, my name is Evan. I'm a film producer, and my question for you is: would you be happier if I invited you to set, or would you rather be removed from that? And what kind of level of being informed do you want as an actor?
And sorry, Melissa, I'm gonna repeat the question real quick just for the video. A question from a producer asking if y'all would be interested or prefer to be invited to set or not.
I always like the invite. I'm probably most likely going to decline because I don't like, especially on narrative things, I don't like to know the behind the scenes stuff. I like to have it at me fresh. I like to see only what is on the film and not what was going on behind the scenes. That's personal preference. I feel like I work better that way.
My answer is like never. Don't. I don't want to go. Maybe one exception would be like if we have gotten really far into the film and there's like a scene that we realized was missing, and in the documentary world, I mean, you know, that's a device some people have to use. You have to go out and pick up the conversation that you missed. It's not the best answer. Obviously, you want it to have all played out exactly as it happened in life, but sometimes you miss the one crucial thing you need to get it across in the language of your film. So a pick-up conversation is part of that or something. And so I generally like try to trust that the team is on the same page and can get it. But sometimes I'm like, if I was there, you missed the one sentence we were really hoping for. But you know, you find a way to make it
I
work.
feel that way too, is the times where I have been on set, I feel like I get into that, like, oh, we gotta make sure we get this, and, you know, and then that, you know, it's not my film, I'm just there to edit, but I feel like sometimes I have been able to catch things and been like, hey, why don't we do this instead, and then, you know, I don't know, I just like to not be involved.
My job, I think, is on the back end to make it work. Whatever you got, we gotta make it work. And sometimes I have to tell you, well, it didn't really work. But I think we can mostly make it work, you know? So, no.
Chris?
I usually like to be on set, but not so much. Every once in a while, like, you know, be like, oh, what about this, or just cover this thing. You know, try to get, or you know, this documentary, maybe ask a question, or like, you know, very respectfully, just like, hey, can you know, say that thing again? Like they kind of stumbled on it, you know, because I'm, you know, even doing documentaries, and I'll be answering the questions, like it being in my brain as they're like talking, just like, can I cut that together? Like what he just said, you know, he just stumbled and he went off on a tangent. I'm just like, I cut that thing right there. So it's, you know, I don't need to be, but then also I've gotten more into shooting, so I like to be on set to shoot, and like just like give me a camera and like a backpack and no lights and just kind of a whole renegade B camera crew just to get coverage and B-roll, because there's like so much of the time they just don't have it, you know, and like DP spends on a documentary, they'll spend an hour and a half on a shot, or like grab 2 shots and an hour and a half lighting setup. And it was like, cool, that was like 7 seconds of footage. you need 20 more minutes of footage to cover the scene, or whatever. So I'm like shooting B-roll, you know. and just grabbing shots. And, like, there's a lot of times you can just shoot. You just need a weird, little obscure shot, so like you know, something out of focus, a character crossing the background, and just So
And by you
I'm-
free B unit.
But yeah,
Free B unit background on set. So I'll
Yeah.
figure it out. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm kind of laughing because if I was the DP on a shoot, which I won't be, and I saw your name as the editor, and then they said, "Oh, he's gonna come and shoot," I'd be like, "Shit,
That's
Chris can shoot his ass off. Like I'm in trouble." All right, what's the next question? Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about like your philosophy about getting that first cut feedback, like what state the edit needs to be for you to be comfortable to send it to someone? And like, do you do things like some base level color grade or sound design to make sure like those things aren't distracting? I'm just curious to hear like baseline philosophy on that.
So the question is philosophy on how far to take a cut, how much to color grade it, how much to sound design it before you get feedback.
I would say it depends on who you're showing it to. Like my client work, I make sure that it's like as done as it can possibly be. Because I know something's gonna catch, their ear, their eye, whatever, and they're not gonna be able to see past it. If I'm working with somebody that's done multiple films before and kind of knows the process, I'll keep things sort of looser. I don't bother with like color until, it depends on the budget too, how much time you have to put into that first cut and how fast you're moving. So it really depends who the first audience is.
Yeah, I would say it depends on who the audience is. I'm not a color guy necessarily. It's like as long as it's not distracting. If there's a shot that's like doesn't have a lot on it for some reason, it's like in a gray space, you're just like your eye, distracts you from the story. But as long as it's relatively smooth, I'm not trying to get it in any sort of perfect place necessarily. And it's always something you can say, well, we'll fix it later. It'll be better later.
Yeah, room for imagination is like no color correct, no mix, and you get to say it's all temp. And they go, wow, can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see it when it's done. So I also like to work with like no color on it in the edit because I want to see it come to life for the first real time, like when it's done. But to that point, I think of like when to show it to people. I mean, in the independent doc space, I think I often am getting to a place where we're starting to spin our wheels. Like we can't see how to make it shorter, how to make it better. We might have it down to 2 hours, or we're like, that's definitely not our intention to have it be 2 hours. But this, I can't see it through the trees anymore. And so that first round of feedback is coming in at a time that's looking for outside, fresh eyes. And usually those are collaborators that are, trusted. I think sometimes showing those types of films to non-filmmakers, your friends, they're very, very nice to you. They tell you it's amazing, but they don't necessarily, they can give you like a emotional reaction of like what are their takeaways, what's sticking with them, and that can be really, really helpful. They're just not also going to be able to like maybe pinpoint why for some reason. So if you're looking for additional support, it's like you're looking for trusted filmmakers or people that you respect to sort of be helping you find the answers. So those are sort of like two different ways of looking for feedback. Are you just trying to audience test and figure out what is working and what's important, or do you need like real help figuring out like story devices and a way of doing something? And that you might want to use more like filmmaker-based people to do. And they're usually much more accustomed to like super bloated, super rough. They know it's a hard process, and so they're usually kind enough.
I'm gonna add to this. I would say, creatively, you don't need to do all the stuff, But if you're sending it to like money people, definitely put a LUT on it,
Or like send them just like a chunk, like save and like hold very dear the whole messy rough cut, and only send them a sample. Like, it's just a teaser, a little sample scene.
Totally agree. I forgot this was being recorded. I was about to say just don't send it to the money people at all. Okay. Yes, back there in the back.
Yeah, I had a question. I was curious how you communicate with directors who might be micromanaging your position as an editor, and if you've ever been in a position where a month, 2 months into a project, you start to realize that a director is kind of telling you exactly how every frame needs to be cut, and there's a way in which you go about it.
Yeah, so the question is about directors that micromanage, not this director, but other directors that will micromanage, like by the cut, you know, like this, use this shot, yeah, what's y'all's take on that? How do you manage it?
I personally never had a director micromanage me. Had Netflix executives micromanage me. I dealt with that. Sorry, which is annoying as hell. Because you're just like, what do you know? Like you're, yeah, it's super annoying that somebody, I think the last Netflix project I did, they hired an editor to give notes. They've got a Netflix editor, and I'm just like, you traitor. It's just like, besides all the dumb Netflix notes, now you got an editor just like, are you sure about that cut there? Like, it's like, seems like 3 frames too long. And just like,
How did you get out of that? How did you deal with this?
I don't know. I just told the director. Told the director to talk to her. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's annoying, and I'll try anything. I don't want to be too, I'll give it a shot, but I'm also like, I cut there, I thought about it. If it was 3 frames too long, I feel like I would have known. But yeah, it's super annoying. I don't know. But you just kind of have to deal with it, I guess. Or, decide whether you want to die on that sword.
I think I also haven't had a direct experience where I've been like in a collaboration with a director who's really coming in very hot with that type of micromanaging. But I think that is in part because in the interview process, I know a way that I've identified that I like to collaborate. And that usually is like asking the director what they think a collaboration looks like on the front end in some ways, to say like, if a director starts saying to me in a documentary that they've got it all figured out on paper, they've got a paper edit, and I'm like, red flag to me, because that's what it's going to read like on paper is not necessarily going to be what's in the footage. It's like the pauses and the in-between moments, and you're not really able to just like totally start and assemble from a paper cut. I don't think. That's a different way of working. And so even in that one question, I'm like, oh, we see this a little differently, this work process of how do we get from A to B to C to a final film. And so I think some of that's come through like, not interrogation in the interview, but like, yeah, kind of asking about what is their process for notes, what is their process for troubleshooting when something doesn't work, and really kind of pushing to ask like, how open are they to trusting the process. Yeah, I think that's it. As far as like, if somebody's micromanaging, are you in this specific example? Like, are you not to put you on the spot? I just like, is this direct?
Yeah, I've had experience in the past working with directors where working through a scene, even in the second draft that we have, and to then saying, oh, at this spot, I need to cut into this shot, and I'll give some advice as to why I think that could be a good or bad idea, and, immediately it's, no, it has to be done this way. So I guess it's their communication styles are more effective in creating more trust between you and the director, when trust is in, editing for each project.
Yeah, so about creating trust when they're really specifically asking for very, very fine cuts in your edit that could be editor decisions. I think my advice to that would end up being, while I haven't been in that specific example, would be to figure out which of those types of notes are like rubbing up against friction or causing you friction for your own editor's like voice. Like, what is sacrificing something for you? And ultimately, I might decide to leave that project for that reason. If those things are starting to hit my non-negotiables, like I think they're affecting the story or a style that I really don't feel that this film can hold. If it's becoming really granular like that, that's not a way that I want to work. I might be like, if that's only like 3 notes and that's happened in the course of a 2-year process, then yeah, if they're really passionate about that, well, sure. But if it's all the time, then I would reconsider that collaboration.
I like to look at things, or I like to be very upfront with directors when we're reviewing something and they see something that they want to change. My first question to them is this not working for you, and why do you think it's not working for you? Don't tell me how to fix it, just tell me what the problem is, tell me what's not working.
Yeah.
And so when I go into my, even just relationships with a director, for the first cut, for the first assembly, the whole process, and I'm very upfront about this when they come, it's like, just watch it, and we'll start pinpointing the parts that you like, that you think are working, and the parts you think are not working. And that's it. That's all it is, the first round. Tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like. And then I'll take it back. It's my job to problem solve and fix it. And then we come at it again. I don't know, if your director, if the director you're working with is very experienced or not. I've had instances where I've worked with directors that are very new to the process, and the problem is just that they don't know how to give feedback yet. And so it's a learning process. Like I remember on one project I had a laundry list of literal cuts on that first round, and we were working remotely, so it was tough. But the literal cuts, like make this, change this, move this, do this, and it was like whoa, pause, and I had to send it back to him and be like, nope, we're going to go through it like this. You're going to tell me what you like and what you don't like. So it's like a little bit of a learning process, I think, for some people and for myself. What I like as an editor, the type of feedback that I like, the type that's helpful, the type that's not helpful. And I also think sometimes directors sometimes just need to see that it doesn't work, right? That their idea, their solution, that they say cut it here and move on, that if you do it and they watch it, it's like, oh yeah, that actually doesn't. I might have done that 5 edits ago and threw that idea out because it didn't work. But they just need to see that it didn't. So I try to keep that in mind too.
Sometimes we can see it, but it's so hard to accept that it won't work. We're unfortunately out of time. I could seriously talk about this for another hour, but I want to just check in with y'all what you're working on and where people can find you or follow your work, if you wouldn't mind. And then Melissa, tell us about the film that you have here. Is it playing?
Yeah, so I've got a film that's playing in a narrative block in Movement tomorrow. It's a film by a first-time writer, director, actress here in Charlotte. So it's her first film, so it was really exciting to work on that with her. So it's called Artist Residence.
Cool. And where can people find you and follow you?
I'm not on any of the socials. So come say hi here. Or you could go, I have a website, melissasoffuture.com.
Cool. Claire?
What am I working on? I actually started a project. I'm starting back up on a project I've been on a hiatus from for 6 months, as is the fun documentary landscape of looking for funding. Really exciting. I'm going to be going back to finish it. That's a feature doc called The Sum of Our Parts. And I'm also consulting on a project called Vestibule, which is really exciting. It's like a dance hybrid documentary. That's going to be super cool. As far as where you can find me, I have a website also. I shortened my name for everybody. It's just Claire Ave.com. Ave Lallemont was too long to try to get people to type into a URL. So you can find me there, or you can come up and I can give you a card that it has that saved on it. So yeah, we can talk.
Cool. Chris?
I'm just finishing up, Monday, and we'll be finished with I'm doing a sizzle for UTA, like United Talent Agency. They do these sizzles for all their clients, so I guess they send it around, which is kind of fun, just because it's like Superman made $500 billion, and you get to cut Superman footage together in Dune, and it's a sizzle thing, which is pretty fun. And then I'm finishing up a documentary on the Ford Festival, which was it started in '93. It's kind of the birth of the jam band scene, post Grateful Dead. So we have it's with Blues Traveler, Fish, Widespread Panic, Herbert Sampson, Dave Matthews, Goose, all those jam band guys. Which is kind of fun. But so that's an independent documentary that some friends of mine made. So they're gonna hit the open market here in a few weeks and start shopping around.
Sweet. And one last thing. All these folks are Charlotte-based editors, so let's give them a round of applause. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ben.